Righty, here we go then. I'm Michael from Rock the Vote New Zealand, and we've put on an event today in conjunction with Reunite New Zealand. It's called a Freedom Picnic. It's for everyone, but I suppose for the freedom movement principally, but anyone that wants to come along. And we've got guest speakers and a wide range of guest speakers speaking about various topics. It's not meant to be solely a political event, and one of our guest speakers is the wonderful Erika from the No. 8 Workers Union, and she's just spoken and we're now doing an interview with her. She's doing great work, and it's principally, from my understanding, around people who have lost their jobs due to being pushed out due to being refusing to take the vaccine, the COVID vaccine, and a breach of contract around that. So there we go. Erika, would you like to say a few words about what you are, who you are, and what you do?
Sure, thanks Mike. I've been working with the No. 8 Workers Union for 2 years now. It'll be 3 later this year. We've been filing personal grievances and breach of contract claims for people who were asked to do things that wasn't in their contract. For example, yes, vaccine mandates, rat tests. Some people didn't like the ethylene oxide that was contained in the swab. We also do cases with workplace safety and workplace bullying. The majority of our cases filed at the moment have been people losing their jobs for not taking a vaccine, or perhaps not taking the third one or the second one after they've been injured. There have been a lot of cases that have been won in the Employment Court and the Employment Relations Authority. Our wonderful mainstream media have not covered them. I think maybe they covered one of ours, which was Wayne Basher and Big Chill the year before last. Wayne got, I think, around $15,000 hurt and humiliation and 3 months' wages for being fired for driving a truck on his own without being vaccinated because he was a risk to his workplace. We promote the Health and Safety at Work Act, we promote the health and safety regulations, and nowhere in any of that legislation does it say that you have to vaccinate someone to work. It's all about workplaces and things and objects and wires and cords. It's not about people and their bodies. And Liz Lambert has been the key driver for the union. She's the union president. So if you're interested, please check out our website, which is number8.org.nz. That's the word number and then the digit 8.org.nz.
Okay, well, just a thing I'd like to add there is that what I noticed, and I wasn't completely across it, but what amazed me, you got all these unions that are there for their workers, the workers pay their subscription or whatever to belong to the union, and they were getting mandated out or forced out of their job because they wouldn't take a vaccine, but the unions wouldn't stand up for them. And I was astonished by that. They just folded and went along with it. Yeah. This whole nonsense. You know, and they're there to protect the workers from the government overreach or what have you, to protect them, and they just didn't do it. Do you have comments about that?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind is the comment from Kash Patel in the US and the FBI when he said that the old buildings should become a museum for the deep state. The unions, I know, for example, the Dairy Workers Union donated $25,000 to the Labour Party. They haven't been doing their job. They've been in this sort of deep state political alignment, following policy, not the actual law. So all the people who paid their unions representation over the years or decades, they can all do a claim back to get that money back. And that's something that the No. 8 Workers Union will be doing in the future once we're through all the breach of contract cases.
Okay, and would you be aware the degree within the various unions of delusionment within the workers about what happened? That there, people that were committed union members, is there widespread, must be division within there, or feeling disillusioned that their respective unions didn't stand up for their workers?
They definitely did not. They just sung Jacinda's greatest hits from 2021. It's all in the emails. It's all there. And the first thing that you start with is the documents, and then you go and do the filing of the claims. People were unfortunately silly enough to put this all in writing and say, no, I'm not going to help you, and we support this.
Yes.
And as the person in charge of the business or undertaking, the PCBU, they have a duty to check out what the person's worried about, not just say, oh, I've checked on the Ministry of Health website and they say it's okay, or I watched telly last night and Ashley said XYZ. And the number of resignations that have been happening in the last 2 years is quite a good sign. The CEO of WorkSafe resigned in September 2023. His replacement resigned last year in April. We've got the Director General, well, Mr. Bloomfield resigned. Then we've got Miss Sarfati resigned a few weeks ago. We've got Margie Arpa resigned from the DHBs. She fired the head of IT and the head of HR last year in October. And the Number 8 Workers Union has a case for Barry Young for whistleblowing.
Wow. Yeah.
And whistleblowing is another big thing that anyone who did something or observed something that wasn't right with them, they can do as our personal grievance, or I think the personal grievance time is probably gone because it's more than 3 years, but whistleblowing, for example, against the nurses union or the chiropractic body, because they told you to do something that wasn't in line with the core values of whatever practice you were following.
Unethical.
So, yes, exactly, unethical.
I was speaking to Erika just before this recording started, and I asked Erika, that I presume that a number of these cases don't actually go to court, if you will, that they're settled beforehand, and she confirmed that lots of them, do that, but there must be lots that do go to court. Yep.
So we've had 42 settlements at the moment from the last couple of years. We've only had about 5 or so in the Employment Court and the Employment Relations Authority. The majority of employers don't want to go on the public record, and the same with workplace bullying and other employment problems. They get settled and there's non-disclosure agreements. Okay. So it's not great for justice. However, the more CEOs and the more corporations that feel the pinch of what they did and not being their own person in charge of the business or undertaking and just following blindly orders, then the better.
And another question, I've just thought of this on the spot. Do you take many cases of people that haven't lost their jobs, i.e. they took the vaccine, they didn't want to, they've got injured, but they've kept their job, and they've come injured, but they're angry or annoyed because they've got a vaccine injury?
Yeah, we do have a case. Okay. We have a couple of cases like that, and that's an example of coercion.
Yes.
And coercion is in the Health and Safety at Work Act, and that's illegal. You can't coerce people in their workplace.
Yeah. So, I just have to acknowledge Erika, because Erika said something beforehand that she's not working. This has become like a full-time job. She's just so busy, and it obviously takes a lot of time and energy and commitment and determination. So I really want to acknowledge that. I mean, there's a lot of freedom fighters doing their bit in their lane, and we all need to do our bit, and you're doing that, so I want to acknowledge it. So how can people find out about you? Like you said to me, you've got a case coming up this coming Friday that people can attend.
Yeah.
I personally would like to go along and support that. So how can people find out more about what you do, basically? What's the best way?
We have a webpage, which is number8.org.nz. We've got recent cases on there and a lot of case law. We've got a Facebook page, which is Number 8 Workers Union of New Zealand, and that has the events that are coming up. Events in the Employment Relations Authority and the Employment Court, they're all public, so anyone can attend those. We had one on Friday with Fonterra. We've got one this Friday with Air New Zealand. We've got one Tuesday, Wednesday with Mitre 10 New Plymouth.
Wow. Yep.
And
these are big companies.
Yes, these are the big companies that couldn't think for themselves and just took advice. But the great thing is that advice is not law, and it's not legally binding. The other cases that we've got coming up, we've got a school one later in, actually we've got a couple of schools in May and in July, and we're just starting to get through the teachers and educational workers who have been, who were wrongfully terminated. They weren't allowed to be terminated until the 2nd of January, according to the COVID-19 Public Health Response vaccination orders. So that's another slip up from the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education also told principals not to accept exemptions in early November.
Yes.
And a lot of people had those exemptions that were valid until the 7th of November, medical exemptions from 2021. The law is not retrospective.
Yes.
For example, if they made marijuana legal, for example, all those people with drug charges, well, it wouldn't be wiped off their record because back then it was illegal. All those exemptions that people had before the 7th, they were all legitimate and they were legal. But their employers said, oh no, the Ministry of Ed said, oh no, the law's changed, you can't accept those anymore, which is wrong. And we are going to get a determination on that from the Employment Relations Authority in the next, probably in the middle of this year.
Okay, another question just popped into mind that perhaps is a good question. Dealing with these companies like, say, Mitre 10 and Fonterra and Air New Zealand and so forth, do you get any sense that they regret what they did? They may not publicly admit it, but do you get a sense that they thought, wow, we rushed into this, if we had our time again, we wouldn't have done it, or we know, any sense of... Yeah,
we do get a few, and it sounds like Charles Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Yeah.
We were under pressure. Things were changing quickly. These are the kinds of excuses that we hear sometimes from these large corporates. And it reminds me of Charles Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
Yeah.
If that's the only response, then I think there needs to be a sensible reading of the legislation and figure out actually how it was. It may have been changing at a rapid pace. However, it's the job of their legal counsel and their lawyers and their HR to actually read it and not just watch TV.
And understand the New Zealand Bill of Rights.
Yeah. There was no law made at the podium by our wonderful dear leader, Jacinda Ardern. You don't make law at the podium, and there was already a case about that in the 70s from Mr. Muldoon when he tried to make law at the podium. So,
and when you said our wonderful dear leader, I could detect the sarcasm in your voice. And you got a team obviously around you?
Yeah, we have membership coordination. We've got a team of advocates, and we have people who help us write up some of our documentation and our website. And we're always looking for volunteers. We've got a volunteer form if anyone is interested in making a difference. And we don't want our kids to go through this, right? We don't want our kids to have to go to school or university.
Well, it's sort of like what Vinnie Eastwood said earlier in his speech. You plant a tree knowing that you're never going to sit underneath it. You're planting the tree for the future. So that's what you're doing. We're all trying to do so that our children have the future that we want for them. The sort of what we've experienced, how New Zealand's been in the past. It hasn't been perfect, but we get rid of all this totalitarian rubbish sort of thing. We have a free country.
Yeah, it's all been... I think Liz Lambert used the analogy of the Wizard of Oz when Dorothy and Toto go and see the wizard and he's going, don't look behind that curtain. It's all been smoke and mirrors. We have all the laws in place. There's plenty of activism out there for people to know about it. Now it's just a matter of using the system to get justice.
Well, if you don't have full transparency, then you're hiding something.
Exactly.
If you're not hiding anything, then why would you not be fully transparent? It's like what John Armstrong was saying earlier. Let's get the Pfizer contract out there, so we paid for it. Let's see it. If you've got nothing to hide, why would you not show it completely unredacted?
And there's been... The Official Information Act is what's behind that case because our government has to be transparent. And in 2015, I think it was, there was the Trans-Pacific Free Trade Agreement.
Yes.
And the government tried to keep that secret, and that went to the same court that what John and I and the group are doing, and it got released. So the US is now calling for transparency. They're calling for removing the improper spending. It's gonna trickle down here. I don't think we're going to be the last place on earth, because our economy is quite dependent on the US economy, and I'm sure Vice President J.D. Vance will be visiting our shores very soon, like he is in Europe.
Bring it on.
Yeah,
definitely. All right, well, I'd like to acknowledge you, Erika. You're a great New Zealander. Some would say a heroine. So thank you for what you're doing, and I'm sure everyone that's aware of what you're doing really appreciates it. So thank you, and thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.